Yume Nikki fangames. There are a million of them, and there's a good reason for that. Yume Nikki is a perfect template for any artist to dump what's in their head out into a large open world, allowing players to freely explore it. It's kind of like dumping your own subconscious directly into a video game. It can make for a very interesting method of storytelling, showing you exactly what's going on inside a character's head. Or it could just simply be a fun collage of all your crazy and abstract thoughts and ideas. Regardless of what exactly went into the creative process, the resulting game is something people can explore and enjoy. Some games are a little more interesting than others, but they all have their unique appeal, being made by all sorts of different people. There's a handful more I often get requests for, so I figured why not make another video where we take on 3 at once. Today we're talking Yume Graffiti, me, and Fleshchild. Let's do it.
Yume Graffiti,
also known as Dream Graffiti in English. This one's a fairly simple Yume Nikki fan game developed by a Japanese guy named Ouden, however that's pronounced. Ouden? I don't know, O-U-D-N, I don't know. Unlike most other Japanese fan game creators, this guy's very active on Twitter and very involved with the Yume Nikki fandom, even streaming Yume Tuki on a number of occasions. It's always a really nice thing to see. But get this, he is also a Yokai Watch fan! Same. Yume Graffiti came out in 2010 during the initial surge of Yume Nikki fan games following .flow's release in 2009. You play as a scruffy looking girl named Yomika. Looks like she's got a permanent case of bedhead. I kinda like how her hair bushes around as you walk. Instead of a traditional bedroom, Yomika resides in a treehouse, complete with a staple balcony and a door she refuses to leave through. You save the game using the book on her shelf and enter the dream world by sleeping in her bed. Well, if you can even really call that a bed, it's just a pile of leaves, but if you can manage to fall asleep on it, sure, it works. This is also one of the few fan games I've played where you can access a sound test, which is done by interacting with the other book on her shelf. Here you can listen to any songs you've heard in the game so far. And of course, we can't exactly ignore that giant hole in the floor. Going down this ladder will lead you to a crystal cavern. It's actually just a dead end. There's nothing to do here, at least for now. Nexus is pretty standard, only 6 areas readily available. Really pales in comparison to Yume Nikki's 12, but you know, most fan games don't even come close to that kind of scale, so you can't really complain. I mean, .flow after all only had 4. From the Nexus, we've got the Jade World, Dark World, Cone World, Walls World, Water World, and Hair World. Most of them aren't really particularly interesting, just your standard black looping screen, floating background, and random objects scattered around. A couple seem a little too similar to Yume Nikki, namely the Jade World and the Dark World. The Jade World resembles the Graffiti World a little too closely, and the Dark World is pretty much a combination of Yume Nikki's Dark World and Puddle Worlds. In fact, a lot of the locations are a little too familiar. A lot of Yume Nikki's settings seem almost copied and pasted into Yume Graffiti. We've got an area that looks a little too much like the White Desert, the sewers, docks, etc. Like, come on man, originality is appreciated. At least the effects are pretty unique. Like always, most of them are just a cosmetic change, some of which will make NPCs act differently, and a very small amount might trigger an event. Like the Tengu effect, it triggers an event where you'll fly off a building. And of course, one of them will increase your speed, taking the shape of a kingfisher bird in this game. I might have mentioned this before, but I never really liked it when the speed effect completely changed the way the character looks, like Yume Nikki when it turns Ususuki's head into a rabbit. I'd rather see them get on a vehicle or put on a pair of shoes or something like that. I'd much rather be looking at something that actually resembles the main character. Well, at least the kingfisher bird is a lot more visually appealing than Yume Nikki's rabbit. I like the way you hop around if you press the shift key. Perhaps the most interesting thing about Graffiti's effects is the substitute for the knife effect. Took me a while to figure out which one it even was, but it's the long hair effect. This kind of thing is nothing new to Yume Nikki. I mean, hell, the long hair effect was even in the original game, but here, instead of being purely for looks, it's actually what you'll use to kill NPCs. Approaching somebody and interacting with them will cause Yomika's hair to lurch forward, stabbing them to death, I guess? Weird, I know, but it's a game about dreams after all, and I wouldn't be surprised if people have actually had dreams where their hair has attacked people. I'm open to the idea. It's at least a lot more creative than just giving them a regular weapon like every other fan game has done. This is also the first fan game I've played with an effect that can only be equipped at a standstill, the pillar effect. If you move while you have this thing equipped, it turns off. Very weird. Come to think of it, there's actually a lot of parts of this game that'll unnecessarily unequip your effect. Climbing down ladders, entering certain rooms, it gets really annoying having to just open the menu and re-equip the Kingfisher just because you touched a ladder. This game's got chasers, these white-haired dudes with what looks like a chunk taken out of the corner of their head. They don't appear very often throughout the game. The one you'll see the most comes out of what appears to be a cardboard box. One of the game's events features Yomika mourning over the death of this guy. Perhaps the chaser represents somebody she lost. Sorrow seems to be a common theme throughout the game. Wherever you turn, there seems to be some reason for Yomika to cry. It makes me think that she was living in a treehouse because she ran away after losing a loved one, or maybe she was blamed for something she didn't do, I don't know. And speaking of events, this game has a lot of them, about 23 in total. If you want to get the full ending, you'll have to experience at least 20 of them, in addition to collecting all of the effects, of course. There is an ending for just collecting all of the effects, but it's kind of a cop-out. You'll place them all in this room here, similar to Yume Nikki, wake up and go down the ladder. There'll now be a new path that you follow until the screen goes dark and nothing. That's it. There's a little more if you see 20 events and then do it, but even after doing that, it's still not much of an ending. As a whole, Yume Graffiti doesn't manage to be that interesting, at least not to me. I don't know, there's just not a whole lot here. Nothing in this game really strikes me as particularly intriguing. The music doesn't really stand out either, with a couple of exceptions. I mean, I really like the city music, but other than that, the world of Yume Graffiti just isn't that compelling. It borrows much too heavily from Yume Nikki, and any areas that are completely original lack any sort of spice to keep me interested. Though I can at least say that the effects are interesting, and interesting things happen. Like I said, there's a lot of events, some of which are pretty neat, but the world itself not being that interesting is definitely a deal breaker for me. I'll sum it up as this. It's diet Yume Nikki. It's got that tranquil and soothing appeal that the original Yume Nikki had without the freaky and surreal stuff. And I think that's the reason why I didn't find this game very interesting, is because I play these games for the surreal and freaky stuff. There's plenty of content here, I just don't really find it that engaging. Screens are short-lived, hallways are long and linear, and the game completely lacks any bizarre or fascinating scenery or characters. And with that, we're gonna move on. Here's another one of the few fan games made by an English-speaking author. Me was created by a girl from Brazil going by the username M256. Judging by her Pixiv favorite, she's quite the fan of Off, rightfully so. It was originally made in RPG Maker 2003, releasing in 2010, but it was soon after remade in VX Ace. The remake added a handful of effects, a complete graphics overhaul, and a computer, very similar to the computer in Yume Nikki. Except here you have to actually move the mouse around with the arrow keys, and it doesn't really hover over anything precisely, making it hard to figure out where to click to get the desired result. I mean, you actually have to click above the window at the top right to exit out of your emails and the wallpaper settings, which I didn't realize at first. I ended up resetting the game twice because I just thought there was no way out of these menus. There's also this dog minigame on the computer you can play, and it's bad. It sucks. It's terrible. I do like the artwork though, it looks nice. In this game you play as Me, a girl with a bright blue bowl cut and a muscle shirt dress thing. What is that? I heard it's actually pronounced meh, but it just doesn't feel right at all saying it that way. Forgive me if saying me isn't actually correct, but that's how I'm gonna pronounce it. I really like her design. The bright colored hair that hides the eyes is something very fresh and different than what I'm used to seeing in these games. They've even got some nice animated artwork of her on the website. I like it. The bedroom is a lot bigger than normal. In fact, it's actually a full-fledged apartment, complete with a bathroom, a kitchen, and of course a balcony. As far as I know, none of the extra rooms rooms actually serve any purpose, and the bedroom itself is very large and empty. A noble idea making it more than what it normally is, but when it's so spacious and empty, it just kind of feels like a waste. Me doesn't really have that many effects, only 11 in total. You've really only got the essentials here: wings to make it go faster, an eraser to kill NPCs, weather to change the weather, orb to fit into small areas, you know, etc. For the most part, it's only narrowed down to simply the kinds of effects you actually use to progress, the kind you actually need to advance. Which is actually kind of interesting, because the point of the game is not at all to collect any of the effects, but instead a bunch of orbs, similar to LCD DEM. The effects, though, are required in getting some of these orbs. Because of this, the game is a little more straightforward with the effects. There's a few cosmetic-only ones, but they're kept to an absolute minimum. Most of them are only in the game because you'll actually need to use them. You might need the color wheel to make this guy freak the hell out so you can get an orb, or turn into this fairy thing to squeeze through a small hole, or use the magnet to move something metal. Speaking of the magnet effect, she looks just like Magnet Man with that thing on. That's cool. And just like Yume Nikki, there's also combination effects, which are very cool, but again, very under-implemented. You never need these things. Just like in Yume Nikki, it's a really cool idea, but what good is an idea if you don't really use it? Very interesting that the weapon in this game is an eraser, almost as if you're erasing your own memories, parts of your dream journal maybe even. I appreciate a simple pair of wings being the speed effect. Now this is what I'm talking about. Me still looks like me, she still looks like herself, just, you know, with something extra on her. I'm not looking at someone who isn't the main character for 90% of the game this way, much unlike Yume Graffiti. Now, one thing I found very off-putting about this game the moment I started playing it was the visuals. It has a lot of stock RPG Maker assets. It doesn't quite look the part. I don't know, a lot of these sprites in this game just don't have that Yume Nikki vibe to it, and this is the first fan game I've played that has had that problem. I mean, look at this. The dream version of her room is just the same image with, they just use the look done! I did the liquefy tool in Photoshop. I'm really glad that didn't steer me away though, because once you're past that, Me is actually a pretty good fan game. It's got a lot of content, very interesting areas, and it's a little freaky. I can tell it borrows a lot of inspiration from .flow, what with all the visceral imagery, not to mention the absurd amount of mutilation and body horror. Good god, it's rad. I also love the chasers in this game. They're these white cloak dudes with hollowed out bloodied faces rimmed with teeth, almost like Kaibutsu from .flow and the Iron Maiden from Yume Nikki had some sort of... This game also has dialogue, something very unlike a traditional fan game, which is welcome. I mean, it's not like you've never had a dream where someone has spoken before. Some of it tries really hard to nail in some sort of story regarding me being really messed up. I don't know, I don't think it does the character development much justice. I kinda already figured that out based on the fact that she dreams about giant faces with bloody holes drilled into them. But more importantly, this is the only fan game I've ever played where you can kill the chasers given you have the right effect. I think stuff like that creates more powerful character development instead of text that's like, hey, remember the crazy thing you did? Yeah, I don't know. Very strange the way you enter the dream world in this game. You'll actually use the stereo instead of the bed like usual. There is dialogue in the game that hints that this is a digital recreation of all of Me's memories. I guess in that case it kinda makes sense. Kinda like .flow, I guess. Now, my biggest problem with this game really is that it's one of the only fan games I've played that doesn't have a good walkthrough. I was able to find every orb but one, so I could not get any of the endings, and I looked the endings up too, and they're interesting. They're actually pretty good. Someone really needs to update the walkthrough for this game, please. On the wiki, some of the orbs haven't been updated to represent the remake instead of the original version of the game. Be wary of this if you actually want to get the endings using a walkthrough. All in all, I really enjoyed Me. It does lack the visual polish of most fan games, but even still, it was a lot more interesting and entertaining than Yume Graffiti was. And on top of that, it borrows very heavily from my favorite fan game, .flow, with all the viscera and gore and whatnot. But enough of me, let's move on to something really gross and gory.
Fleshchild.
This one's not exactly a Yume Nikki fan game, but more so a Yume Nikki inspired game, though it did start off as a fan game, being created by an American indie dev named Bleat, also known for making The Looking Glass, another Yume Nikki fan game. Stumbling across her YouTube channel, I found that she did a full Let's Play of Lisa the First, off in .flow too. Excellent taste right here. It really does not take long to see the .flow inspiration here. The character designs are remarkably similar, specifically the hair and the eyes. They almost look identical to that of Smile from .flow. You start out as a sort of fetus-looking thing, an amorphous, fleshy blob void of any real human traits. The goal of the game is to grow into a human, and to do that, you'll explore the world above looking for body parts that you can Frankenstein yourself together with. The artwork in this game is ridiculously good. The sprites are fantastic. They look very much like something out of .flow, but with a fleshy twist, giving it an identity of its own. But to help even more with that is the full screen art. It's like the robot from Axiom Verge and Zero Two from Kirby had a beautiful, boarded, disgusting child together. It is lovely. The game is split into two kinds of sections, the segments where you'll leave your fleshy underground layer and search the surface for organs to feed on, and the dream sequences that play much more closely to that of Yume Nikki. The reality segments are a lot less open. It plays more like a puzzle adventure game than a massively open world exploration game like Yume Nikki or .flow. The dream sections, on the other hand, are a tad more open, though nowhere near as much as Yume Nikki or really any other fan game for that matter. You'll still explore looking for effects called mutations in this game. They don't serve as anything more than a cosmetic change, except for the speed effect, which, that was given from the start. Strangely enough, though, in the reality segments, you don't need an effect to run, you just hold shift to do it, which, yeah, it's nice. I appreciate not needing to equip something to run for once. The goal of the dream sections is simply to find the area that'll make you wake up. Finding the mutations really seems to be just a distraction, a sort of bonus. The core of the game takes place during the reality sections. When you first start, you're just a fleshy blob named Vis, or Vis, yeah. Your first goal is to find a brain, and there's actually two to choose from in the lab, the brain of a human female and the brain of a human male. Picking either one will determine whether Vis becomes a boy or a girl, becoming VC or Vice respectively. Your choice will create subtle differences throughout the game. For example, when you're searching for a human head, you'll snoop yourself into the middle of an argument between a couple. If you became Vice, you'll have to kill the guy and take his head, and for VC, you'll have to kill the girl. It's awesome that there's totally separate artwork for each corresponding gender. The production value and attention to detail here is very high. I really like the subtle details, like how you won't be able to understand all of the English words on a sheet of paper until you've found a brain. And before I forget, I need to mention that the music is really good. It's chiptune styled synth, and it gives off an ominous and foreboding vibe. It really adds to the atmosphere. And while I do feel the dream sequences are definitely the low point of the game, they are made worthwhile by the conversation it creates between characters. There's a flesh monster in the Nexus named Visibill, who doesn't have much comprehension of human traits and behavior. As you become more and more human, your dreams become more and more human, and Visibill will question you on what happened in your dreams, asking you of the purpose of things like dolls and toys. What are they for? I just don't understand what these people are doing with smaller versions of themselves. That's actually kind of fascinating in a way. Like this alien flesh monster has this goal of making you into a human, but the more and more you achieve that goal, the less and less it understands you, the more and more distant you become from them. Man, it's kind of interesting. It sparks this charming naivety, making this disgusting mound of tissue a somehow very lovable character. I really like this game. The gameplay and puzzles, they're decent enough, but it's the artwork and music that really sell me on it. My one only real issue is that it was never finished. It originally came out as far back as 2012, and the latest version only came out in 2015. It's far from finished. It's not even halfway done. You can tell from this room here that records how many body parts you've gathered so far. I want to see this game get finished. I would actually pay money for it. If it was finished and had a final version published on Steam for like $10 or something, I would buy it in a heartbeat, absolutely. What very little was there left me wanting so much more. I should probably check out some of this person's other games. There's a handful more of them, including the newly released Huntress of the Hollow and the before-mentioned The Looking Glass. What is with the best fan games not getting finished? I mean, last time I talked about Yume Nikki, and I talked about Answered Prayers, and I really liked Yume Nikki, and I really liked Answered Prayers, and I really wish they got finished. but they never got done. But what can you do other than just play what's available? I definitely recommend checking out Fleshchild. Hopefully we'll see it get an update someday. Me as well. Don't let the inconsistent production value steer you away. It is a very interesting fan game. And Yume Graffiti, while it's certainly not bad and does have higher production value than me, I just didn't find it that interesting. In a world with literally hundreds of Yume Nikki fan games, it's really hard to make yours unique and stand out in some kind of way. I'm honestly surprised that so many people actually managed to do that. I guess it just takes a unique style and a fresh perspective. And again, that is why I love these games so much. It's like you're seeing all these artists from different places in the world all make the same game again and again. If 100 different artists from different places on the planet all painted the Mona Lisa, yeah, you'd more or less have the same painting 100 times. But you would have a very interesting art gallery to look through.